First thing we'll do is take action on our closed session items. Do we have any motions, Mr. Gordon? We'll go around the circle here.
Yes, Madam President. I move to approve the resignation and release agreement between Fort FBISD and Lena Harris, certified employee.
Second. We have a motion by Mr. George and a second by Mrs. Costan. We have discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Verdeen?
Excuse me, yes, Madam President. I move to approve a waiver of interest in the 30-day notice period with respect to the Texas Department of Transportation's proposed sale of 3 parcels of excess right-of-way totaling 15.97 acres located at the intersection of University Boulevard and U.S. Highway 59, and to delegate authority to the superintendent to notify relevant parties of the district's decision.
We have a motion by Mr. Verdeen and a second by Mrs. Costan. We have discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mrs. Costan?
Yes, Madam President. I move to approve the resignation and release agreement between Fort FBISD and Marilyn Hinton, certified employee, in accordance with the terms discussed in closed session, and authorize the superintendent to finalize the agreement pending legal review.
Second. We have a motion by Mrs. Costan and a second by Mr. George. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes, Madam President, I move to appoint Brian Gwynn to the position of Budget Director.
A motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mrs. Costan. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And Mrs. Miller, do you have one? Oh,
Yes, Madam President, I move to appoint Georgette Boulard to the position Director of Advanced Academics.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hellinger and a second by Mr. George. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I believe that concludes our closed session items. Thank you very much. We're now ready for our information items tonight. And I'll just remind everybody that we're going to hear a lot of information. And our goal is to make these new microphones a success and to make sure we have good conversation from the board, that we have a clear understanding of all these topics, and that if you need feedback, Mr. Cleaver, that we make sure we communicate that well to you, and please ask us for clarification if I don't manage to clarify it for you. So, I just open the program and we have to do that. And she'll hand it right on over to Mr. Cleaver.
Thank you, Dr.
There's a little bit of feedback. It could be a phone next to a microphone.
That's going on here right now. So, thank you. Thank you for being here. And as we got ready for tonight's meeting, I did check the weather to make sure that we didn't have any kind of rain coming in. This is the 3rd time we tried to meet on this, so hopefully it'll be a charm.
I thought we'd get canceled because of the heat index.
I didn't think about that. I didn't look at that cold. But you're actually right, Ms. James. We are here to come to a common understanding and some common vocabulary and some common concepts tonight, and in a spirit of talking and conversation. We have 3 very good presentations. The first one will be by Ron Bailey and his team with PDK to discuss the lead concept, which is the leadership in energy and environmental design. And without further delay, I'll turn it over to Ron Bailey to introduce his team.
Good evening. It is nice to finally get here and make this presentation to you. I don't know how many weeks it's been that we tried to put it together. I'm Ron Bailey. Been with PDK for 30 years now, specializing in schools, not only design of, but also planning of. And throughout this time, we've had extensive experience in lead concept schools. And so we're going to present to you just some general information as far as maybe why you want to consider using or utilizing LEED, and what are some of the benefits of that. But first, before we do that, I just kind of want to introduce the folks we have here. This is Mark Wodorsky. Mark is a lead AP and also an engineer. This is Eric Smith. Eric and I actually have had the pleasure of working with FBISD for many years now. How many years have we been? And I think our first project a while back was First Colony Middle School. We did band hall edition, and I know that's been at least 20 years, 22 years or so. Alan Stilts is also a lead AP. Alan actually helped, we wanted to have him here as well because he actually helped USGBC put together the test for lead AP. So he's very knowledgeable in those requirements. And then Jennifer Quigley, also a lead AP, and she will be the project manager on our elementary school that we're just started the design process today. So, sustainable schools and LEED certification, and you do have a book in front of you, but it's this PowerPoint, so you'll be able to see it before you. It goes by many names, and you'll see some of them up here: sustainability, energy efficiency, high performance schools, green building, and of course LEED. And what does it all mean? Well, I really want to kind of back up a little bit and give you a little history as far as what does all this mean and how can we utilize it for our buildings. It's actually nothing new. Earliest known is back in the 1700s. The word sustainability was first used by a German scientist. From that point forward, we started seeing actually our first passive solar design for architects and designers in the office. In the room today, you won't recognize this one. It's the Crystal Palace, and it was done in 1851. So just the idea of energy and alternate ways of using energy it's been around for a while. In the U.S., interest grew quite a bit, starting in the 60s. And around that time, on the building part, or the side of sustainable design, we started looking at not only how much does it cost to build a building, which of course is very important, but what does it cost to run that building over the many years that you're going to be using. It's called life cycle of the building. And that kind of brought a whole different tone to it. Could you do some things up front, it might cost you a little more at the time you build it. How much would it save you over time? And we have some information on that to show you. In the early 1990s, 1993, U.S. Green Building Council was actually established. And then in the year 2000, that's when LEED was founded. What is LEED? Well, the actual title is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Again, it was developed by U.S. Green Building Council. And part of it is that it's a rating system to help determine the performance and sustainability of buildings. It just gave us a tool to judge, to see how efficient is our building with regards to energy and things like that. What is a sustainable school design? Well, basically it's an effort to create a very healthy environment, but being aware of the energy, resources, and money it takes not only to build that building, but over the years to operate it, to run it. And some of the qualities that we would normally see is listed here. Things such as just a healthy building, comfortable building with emphasis on the mechanical systems, so that there'll be not only very clean and a good clean, healthy atmosphere, but also one that outside of the realm of school buildings, but in other buildings, you know, we might look and say, oh my gosh, this granite is such a pretty material, let's try to utilize that. Well, the granite may come from Italy, and so you're actually paying to ship a material all the way over here and use it in our building. Is there a better way, more efficient way, more effective way of using materials much closer to home? And of course, the answer is yes. You may not be aware of them until you research and find them, but what are the attributes? Well, you're paying much less in energy costs and shipping it over if it's coming from, around the corner or somewhere in Texas. And LEED acknowledges that, and in trying to strive to a certain level, such as being certified, they give you points if you're able to accomplish certain things along those lines. And other ones, very important is that a sustainable school is also commissioned, which means that it's a third-party independent company that checks out and certifies all the systems, such as the mechanical systems and so on. Very exhaustive way of doing this, but what it does is guarantee that the systems work the way they're supposed to in a highly efficient way. And without commissioning a building, you obviously will not get that level of detail to ensure that your building is working at an optimum. And then, of course, it's a building that teaches. If we can design a building that not only houses the kids, but also aids in the teaching of those children, then we have a very successful school building.
A little bit about the process, and this is the first time with this mic, so just, if you can't hear me, wait. But it's a process that begins with certification, and the first step is registration. Okay, so you have to get your building registered. It's an online web portal that allows you to register your building. You have to submit your plans and templates, we call them, that describe how you achieve certain points. You submit them for review and ultimately get feedback from a third-party reviewer who's looking at these and ultimately will grant the certification. It's the U.S. Green Building Council that administrates this program. And the first step is, of course, to select a rating system. They happen to have one specifically for schools. The B, D, and C is building design and construction. So there is a scorecard that has been set up by the USGBC that helps guide you through the process. We happen to be, as state would have it, right at the beginning of the new version. So buildings that we submit now will actually have a slightly different set of rules, and all the designers across the nation are scrambling a little bit to make sure they understand carefully what the implications are. It still will look a lot like the previous versions, but there's a new set of standards that we have to comply with. This version 4 is what we'll be hearing, and they're dropping the year, so we'll start seeing version 4, 5, etc. It won't be version 3, 2009, so they changed the nomenclature from name. One of the points they've added is, I applaud the board for what you're doing right now, is something they call integrated process, and it's really the concept of getting the stakeholders together very early to talk about what types of lead concepts you do want to pursue. So that's a new credit. It's a new credit. It's not a separate category, but a new credit with version 4. The big picture steps, of course, are establishing the team. You've got the owner, of course, FBISD. In this particular case, we have a program manager, Jacobs, that will, of course, be included. And then the team of architects, engineers, and the commissioning agent is someone as well that, again, if you're pursuing an enhanced commission building, that they would be at the table from the very earliest stages. So you get the folks all together in a room, and then you have to decide kind of as a group what level of certification are you after. As a minimum to be recognized as certified would be 40 points. And then it goes up from there. They're kind of in an Olympic format here. We get silver, gold, and platinum for buildings as you move up the ranks in terms of points that have been achieved. This is just a pie chart to give you another visual. One of the reasons the engineering that leave the building will be. It does include.
I might say, at any time, please, two-way communication here. If you have any questions, just interject, interrupt, it's fine. So we can, really, our goal is just to try to help and explain what this process is about.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, Mark, could you explain more of the details about energy and atmosphere, or do you plan on getting into that?
There is a section on that, but again, just to take your question, I appreciate that. From an energy standpoint, we're talking about what percentage, there's a baseline that the USGBC has established, and it's the energy code. There's this minimum requirement, so you have to exceed the energy code by so many points. And then for a leak building, by adding a couple of efficiency points, say bringing efficiency chillers, super efficient lighting. As you go down the list of all of the engineered systems in the building, you can get there with the building envelope that contribute as well. Better glass, better insulation. You're ultimately looking at how much energy do I have to put into the building to maintain thermal comfort conditions. Okay? And again, it has to also be the atmosphere of the building. That also refers to the indoor air quality, those sorts of things. So I have a few more bullet points on that, but in general, it's conservation of natural resources what we're referring to. And these are the things that a group like this, in the integrated process, would talk about. What are the most important? And we've seen groups like this, you take the district mission statement and the goals and values of the district, and some of these points may make more sense than others to pursue. That's kind of the beauty of this system. It is a pick and choose. You don't have to chase out of 110. You just need to get the 40.
If I could just interject a little bit in our design of 49, which I mentioned started this afternoon. That's a 2.5-day intensive process to go through to develop the schematic of that school. A part of that we're recommending a little separate. We have the approaches of Jacob Chips to do what we call an eco-charrette, or just a small, really it's a meeting to talk about just what Mark said, and that is what are some of the things we want to try to accomplish with regards to new concepts and things we want to pursue.
And then the next series of slides is just to give you a little flavor of each of the categories. So location and transportation, again, the goal of this whole category is just to try to minimize, the number of bus miles that it might take to get folks into the building. Try and encourage alternate forms of transportation, bikes, foot traffic, those sorts of things. So again, the slide there is showing what is a huge issue for Texas districts is the transportation angle. So we're just trying to encourage you to minimize the travel associated with getting students in and out of the building, and to minimize the parking infrastructure necessary for the vehicles. Materials and resources, as Ron mentioned that earlier, it's making wise decisions on what materials to use, but also recycle content, trying to reuse materials, reclaim them, source materials from renewable resources. The goal of this one, FSC certified wood on a project, that has to do with where the wood has been procured from. So it's being very cognizant of where you're getting the materials, and then trying to recycle on campus itself, making sure that the facility has the means to recycle materials. Water efficiency is then implies low flow fixtures and one concept, but also selecting plant materials or minimizing plant materials that are not indigenous to the area or need excessive amounts of water. So it's about a holistic approach to minimizing the water consumption that this category is about. Energy and atmosphere, again, to the point, we live in a very high dew point climate, and energy consumption for schools is a huge cost outlet. One of the biggest checks you'll write after staff salaries is going to be for operating costs. So there's a huge incentive to try to reduce on a life cycle basis the amount of energy that we use, and at the same time, you're trying to minimize the impact that your building will have on the atmosphere by using proper refrigerants, making sure that you, if possible, using sources of energy that create less, they call it ozone-depleting potential than other sources of energy. So each of these categories, energy and atmosphere, for example, has, you see there's 33 points. So you could talk for quite a while. I'll skip forward, but there's a lot of points available within this particular category. The site itself is a concept of trying to maximize whatever natural resources you have on the site, putting your building at the highest point of the site to minimize fill, shrinking the footprint to minimize impervious coverage. So again, when you get into the site area, you're making sure you look at how does my building sit on the site, and at the same time, how do I interact with the properties around me? How do I make sure I keep my right from trespassing over to my neighbor? How do I keep my stormwater from adversely affecting their property and so forth? So there's all these things to think about, which most designers will use a lot of these, but the LEED program really pushes you to make it a priority. Another category is called indoor environmental quality. That has to do with the air you breathe in the facility. Mechanical systems are key to keeping good indoor environmental quality, but you also see is architectural finishes. Buying materials that have low VOC, which is just an off-gassing component. Making sure that you maximize daylight, those sorts of things. That all has to do with how the occupants feel within the building. This is a very critical category, especially in the education business, making sure that everybody's able to focus and stay engaged in the indoor environment.
There's one item there that says protect the HVAC system during construction. Prior to the meeting, we were talking over here just about an example. We did a LEED certified building in Isleta ISD in El Paso area called the Valier Elementary School. And the contractor, which was very knowledgeable with this process, still, when they brought the ductwork on site and began hanging it, there's some very strict requirements of protecting that ductwork so that dust and dirt doesn't get inside. And the commissioning agent almost got the contractor in trouble because he stretched that. We need to make sure that all that is being protected. And you compare that often to just a regular building that isn't following these guidelines, where you will see ductwork that really are exposed and so on. So that's a good example of just the intent of this program of giving you a very healthy and energy efficient building that we discussed out there.
Then there's a couple innovation that's kind of a technical category, but it allows you to use your creativity and to take advantage of that in the process of planning or use of the facility. They throw in a point for having pretty accredited professionals, and it's a 6-point category, but we've seen folks use some very innovative ways to tap into that point category. And then regional priority credits. Again, if there's something you can do on site that's specific to the region, they do encourage you to try to use the natural resources that are available to you, that are very close to you, and facilities that will avoid, if you can, disturbing a greenfield site, for example, or repurposing a facility. There's several different ways to tap into the regional priority credit. And Ron's mentioned commissioning. We just wanted to back up, and if there's any questions at all on that, please bring them out. But just by way of definition, commissioning is one of those words you might hear many times and you're just not sure. We've given you a definition of the functional performance testing and construction phase verification. There'll be a specification manual that's 1,000 pages and 350 drawings, and the commissioning process is making sure that all of those diagrams and all those words have been turned into a functioning system. Your staff is trained to operate, they understand how it works, they know what it's supposed to do, and there's somebody has witness who's looking out specifically for the owner's interest of all of these gadgets. introduces that professional at a much earlier phase. And in version 4, he would literally be a distant, he'd be at the kickoff, and he'd kind of follow the project all the way through. And then he'd also be there at 10-month point to make sure, hey, a year into this building, did you guys really do what you say, what you promised to do? So the enhanced commissioning just takes it to an extra level of protection so that when the contractor's gone after the 1-year warranty and everyone's left the site, you guys are sure that you have a building that operates the way it was originally designed and for what was paid.
And also as a note, the fundamental commissioning, that's a prerequisite in getting a LEED certified building. The enhanced commissioning is additional above and beyond for additional credits. But also in the version 4, enhanced commissioning is not only mechanical systems and part of the infrastructure of the building, but there's also additional points associated with commissioning of the building envelope, so that you get a better envelope of the building to hold in heat and cool, so that you get much more efficient building.
These next few slides are just some examples. This happens to be under, said everyone that we will show you is under a previous version of the LEED scorecard because they've just come out with the latest scoring. But it kind of shows you by category, the number on the left of the hash is how many points were achieved, on the right is how many were available in that category. So this was an area of elementary school that got certified at 30, the threshold is now 40. But you can see some of the hallmarks there. Again, that was regionally poured stone, that was wood flooring, the school is a teaching tool. There's a screen there that shows kind of the school in real time. So as you go into buildings that are LEED designed, there's certain features that you start to see.
That's actually not wood. It's a product called LPT. It looks like wood, but it's a recyclable material, and you also don't have to wax it. We actually did that on the second floor of Ridgepoint High School. You see that. Very attractive material, but also has some good
Just continuing on, this is a shot of the library again, under the area of energy and atmosphere. There's daylight harvesting that's going on in space. We're dimming these fixtures in real time. On the bottom left, you see this solar array that happens to power part of the learning center itself. So there are additional points that were achieved, and actually that one actually had a point on innovation at the time. So those are some of the things you'll start to see. Ron had mentioned that the value never shot in that particular building in the past, so it's a little tough, but one of the sustainable site features and water conservation features is very little planting, but there's a lot of native stone in the area that is used for landscaping. So again, rather than trying to keep plants alive in the scalding heat, you use other things to break up the monotony of just pavement.
And tying this particular building into just as a learning tool, and actually it's a historical site as well. They discovered a Pueblo village, I guess, so remnants of Pueblo village, three native Indians, I guess. They've been there a long time ago. And so the intent was to pick up on the historical side of the project too. And so we incorporated a lot of the native colors that were very, very prevalent during that time period of the Pueblo Indians, and symbolism of the Pueblo Indians, put that throughout the building. Really, it was really kind of independent read, but I want to bring it up just because it did aid in making the building a teaching tool as well.
Again, moving forward, here's another building that was in the Carver School District in New Orleans. You can see in the kind of point system what it was able to achieve. And again, Northeast ISD, which is in the San Antonio area, this is a building that has some particular indoor environmental quality and sustainable site features that were pretty exciting and innovative. This one actually made it to silver. So once you get in the 40s, and you can sometimes up the ante and say, hey, if we're at 48, why don't we just get 50? So we certainly we know sometimes the USGB in was above your target goal. And so this one we were actually able to make silver. There's another Texas school from the version 2007. It was a high school. It took 3 years to build. It wasn't certified till 2011, but this was certified at 34. And then we just have a few slides to show you about one of your projects, just to highlight the fact that you guys are already pretty plugged into this program. This particular elementary is number 47, Parent Sullivan, and this opening slide shows that the arrows show the natural daylight that are coming into all of the classrooms. So the daylight is already very prevalent attribute of that school. Here's the school card. This is still pending certification, but you can see the different credit categories, the different certification levels that are being pursued. On the site, presuming 12 out of 24. You see some of the descriptions on the maximizing of open space, and again, not to get into all the details, but the bottom line is that the district is currently very heavily invested in these types of principles. Water efficiency, pursued that particular building is pursuing 5 of 11, so that's actually a pretty strong goal. Excellent high percentage on the landscaping, which is 60% water reduction. Energy and atmosphere, this is one that, again, the architects and engineers get together along with building owners. This one can challenge you sometimes to put in systems with this type of efficiency, but you can see they've got a strong 22 and some change percent reduction. And that's above their prerequisite. Again, fundamental and enhanced commissioning in that particular project. Materials and resources, that particular building is pursuing 4, and I think they got a line on a couple more. So that puts you out of that possible 13 in the 6th range. And then indoor environmental quality, that's a repeated that slide, but it does bear repeating. Getting natural light into these buildings, it's a balancing act. When you let the light in, you also can't let the heat in, so you have to do this with the excellent planning in advance, just so you minimize the heat getting of all this natural daylight being caused. And then on this particular project, they actually have they're pursuing 3 points on innovation and design. And this is one of my favorites. I've never heard this before, but the design for the active occupant, that's a pretty innovative thing for busy children. So that's up to that team. And then regional priority credits, these are a little tougher to get, but it looks like you guys may be able to get money for this particular project with the amount of waste that's being converted. So there's a summary on, that's again on the Sullivan project. Just like I said, if that was the elementary course that was. Then costs. We get this question quite a bit, and again, just like I said, these are averages of what we've seen. But in general, what we've seen is when you make the decision that you're going to have a 20% for school, you're already going to be doing many things that are consistent with the LEAD program. There is some cost to it. So we've seen on average around 2% premium. But again, what we found on the life cycle, that is a very small amount compared to the total construction cost at 2%. It's paid back very quickly in operating costs. And then there's also incentives for some of these systems. The SCORE program from CenterPoint, schools and communities considering resources, you can get significant checks back. I'm sure the board is aware, and I've actually been doing a couple of those checks that come in. So there are ways to offset many of the capital costs associated with the dollars up front. And we wanted to share examples. This is an average of 3 of our recently certified projects that just kind of want to share with the group. There's some fixed costs up front. If you added up all of that, it's like $10,000 just to get in the queue. queue to get your job reviewed for a typical elementary school. There was the 328,000 was we bid all of these items as alternate. I'll call these kind of the lead features, because everyone was curious, well, what are these gonna cost? What if we can't afford them? So we put costs to them, and then the commissioning agent fee. So in this particular case, that total cost was $400,000 range to get this building submitted for LEED and certified for LEED. And we just kind of wanted to give you an example of some of the energy savings that we've seen, again, looking at comparable facilities in these districts that weren't LEED certified. So we kind of just tabletopped them, those that were LEED and those that weren't LEED. We saw a number in that particular range there around $70,000, and we just wanted to do a simple payback. That's about five years and some change on just a simple payback. And then most of these systems have a minimum lifespan recommendation of around 20 years for well-maintained systems, which is what we've seen for Fort Bend ISD. You guys definitely take care of your systems. So then you start to see over the lifetime, there's a significant amount of savings that these facilities offer in terms of operating and maintenance savings. So we just kind of wanted to give you just a high level dollar amount if you were interested. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and this portion is up to you guys. Anything?
All right, let's see what questions we have. Anybody? Mr. Burdine?
I was curious, how do you offset the heat generated by natural lighting in regards to the extra electricity needed for your HVAC system? I know lighting's a lot less expensive to run than an HVAC system is, and is there like a ratio of heat over cost, or?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a multi-point answer. The first step is glass of a performance that is commensurate with the size of the fenestration itself. So we do an energy model. That's part of the process of establishing how do we make good decisions. So we have to build two buildings. You have to build this sort of baseline building, and then you have to build your proposed system. And so you have to, then you sort of manipulate the glass to see what is the right U value for this glass. What is the minimum U value and shading coefficient so I don't have excessive heat gain. But I do get to take advantage of the fact when I'm bringing in this extra light, I can dim. When I'm bringing in the natural light, I can dim the electrical light and reduce the electrical consumption in the space. So the bottom line is that it nets out. The same way if you just had brick openings and smaller glass, you wouldn't have put in as efficient glass. You would have gained a similar amount of heat. So that's really how you approach it, is how many BTUs would a brick wall with a smaller opening lead you to, and then if I'm going to make more glass, then I have to make sure that I offset those BTUs with higher performing glass, and sometimes a higher performing roof can offset that as well. So I basically got this cube, and it's a little bit of a puzzle. Just make sure the amount of heat coming in still doesn't become excessive. If it does, then you go back to the drawing board and say, hey, we need a shading device. There are tools that you use to make sure that you haven't exceeded the capacity of the air conditioning system, because really what have you gained if you have all this natural light and then you have to put in a giant chiller to keep up with it. Right. So you do have to put in premium efficiency components, and you have to analyze that heat load to make sure you haven't made an error in judgment thinking, hey, more is better. That's a whole nother session, but more is not necessarily better. But with strategic positioning of the building and shading of the glass and selection of the glass, you can make sure you haven't unduly burdened your mechanical system.
Okay, so the glasses are a big variable there.
Not just the glass, but it's the architectural features you talked about, shading devices, whether it's exterior shading devices so that you're keeping glass above the shading, that you can bounce light into the space, but you're not getting the direct sun on the glass, so you're not getting that heat load into the building, but you're getting the amount of light and you're getting the views for the students. So it's really a balance of the aesthetics, the architecture, the efficiency of the glass, and then it's a big balancing act.
And by implementing some of the ideas that Mark and Alan just said, that you can accomplish that without just necessarily putting in a bigger AC unit, which of course costs more money to run and so on.
Right.
Other ways of accomplishing it.
Okay.
And sometimes you just decide that was a bad place for a window, so you just let your architect know, let's not put glass right there,
Yeah.
let's come up with another way.
Okay, appreciate that.
And that, I'm just gonna follow up on what you were saying, so that comes back to some of the, determining, say, the orientation of the building on the property and how you're gonna move students through the space where you want that, the light to be or the windows to be, because that's gonna make a difference of how.
Yeah, in fact, I wish we'd brought our sketches of our charrette that we did this afternoon, but we had that very discussion about which way is the library facing onto a courtyard. You don't want to face due west, because that's where we have all of our, harsh solar gain, and so you want to face it in such a way south, for example, to where you get some of the really good natural light, but not all that heat gain. And it's a process. As we started very general this afternoon, but that's just the beginning of it. As we continue to develop, we constantly have to look at it to make sure that we're staying within those parameters.
Okay. Mrs. Tossan?
Thank you. A couple questions. One, how do you determine which of these items you strive to get, or which ones you don't, or does it depend on the project, or how do you make those recommendations or choices?
That's a great question. What we found is there's some, we borrowed the term from kind of society of the low-hanging fruit. There's some that just seem to be simple
Easy
to get. And so you pick those, but we have included in your booklet, the very last page has the scorecard itself. And it's kind of by committee that you, what we do is we usually take the result of the design charrette, which everyone decided, hey, this is what we'd like to have, and we kind of benchmark it against the scorecard to see how close are we. And then when you start looking at the point system, you're trying to gauge, okay, can I get there with a little better mechanical? I may have exhausted my mechanical points because I know I wanted this much glass. So now I have to start looking a little harder at, some of these other points, the water reclamation or possibly the materials themselves. So you really do that in the group. We've found in general you get probably 2/3 to 3/4 without trying too hard, but the next 10 points can be a challenge. And so that's where the group can help you decide if some make more sense than others. I don't really have a formula for it, but again, it does come down to looking at these points, looking at these categories. And if landscaping is one of those areas that you may have a grounds crew that says, hey, I don't want certain kinds of plants, and that pushes you a certain way. And then again, you just kind of look at, or maybe you have a site that is close to mass transit or a bus system, or maybe there's some way you can tap into some of these other points. So you kind of go through the categories once you get your initial design and massing for the building, and then it becomes a group effort to say, okay, this point or that point are ones that we feel is important. And a lot of it is owner-driven,
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Are there any that you particularly, or that are particularly good for students? Because as I was listening to you, I mean, obviously, I think you called it the interior quality.
indoor environmental quality.
Indoor environmental, thank you very much. That, that's good for students. I mean, that's obvious that.
And that's a great place to.
Enhances the learning environment. Are there particular ones that you strive for, given that you're designing a school for learning, a place for learning?
Usually, yes. I would say the enhanced indoor air quality, construction indoor air quality, those are a couple 2 and 3 point categories that we like to push for. Again, the daylighting is another one when you look at that. And then over in the energy and atmosphere, where you optimize the energy performance. That's through things like building automation systems. Those are another area that we like to, if we're gonna splurge a little bit, they actually pay back because they help you keep from running your building when you don't need to, or parts of your building that you don't need to. So we tend to look at those areas that affect student achievement and operating cost. It's kind of what we focus on.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last question. This is all new to me, so this is definitely a learning experience for me. So I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. So what if we say these things are a priority for us, and that there are certain things that we want to accomplish in our schools, but we don't want to pay for the LEED certification? Tell me the benefit of having a LEED certified school versus doing these things that we deem important but not pursuing the certification.
Well, we've done a bunch of buildings both ways, so I think it's certainly possible to build a building without LEED certification. Where we have found it to be advantageous really has been not necessarily on the design or the construction side, because you kind of got this guy over your shoulder with a clipboard, you know, kind of double checking what you've done. And so that's, you know, if I put myself in your shoes, that's probably the primary benefit, is somebody who is looking out for you and not necessarily worried about, well, maybe I didn't quite design that right, or maybe I didn't quite build that right.
But it'll be okay.
But
It'll
when,
be okay. Yeah, that commissioning
They'll
agent.
never know. Those trustees will never know.
That's right. The commissioning agent really just guarantees that everything is gonna go in the way it's intended. And you spent money for that. You approved money for it to be done a certain way, and that commissioning agent is vital to make sure that happens. And as a result of having that person, you can get certification. So it's almost like in a way, almost like a little side benefit. You know, what you're really wanting is to guarantee that all this stuff is put in the way it's supposed and worked the way it's supposed to do. And to do that, the method in which you obtain that also allows you to get certified. So it is a very good system to make sure that you're getting what you want to have. And
So it's basically like our guarantee that what we say we're doing, we are actually doing.
Exactly right, exactly right. You know, that ductwork example was a good example. On most projects, the ends are open a little bit more, maybe a little dust and sand, you know, went in there. Well, that directly affects the efficiency of that system. Would anybody have known? Unless you're checking, you know, your cost over life cycle, maybe not. But that commissioning agent caught it and said, if you don't do that, then you'll have the pleasure of taking all that ductwork out and putting new ductwork right back in. So it really is a good, fail-safe method to be sure you're getting what you're paying for.
And you think it saves us money over time as well to make sure that those things are being done.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Hollier?
I guess I just wanted a little bit more clarification about this commissioning agent. The commissioning agent works for your firm?
well, if you have a fundamental commissioning, there's a couple levels of it. First of all, he's outside of the design team. He can be an employee of the design profession. We think it's most effective under the enhanced commissioning agent, puts that design professional under a separate shop. So
As a third party.
as a true third party, and we think there's value in that, having somebody. And you know, I'm an engineer and I work for a bunch of architects, and I think they all would say, yes, we're honest people. We're going to give you a good building, even if you don't have the commissioning agent. But we've all learned that these guys can be of assistance in making, you know, they're looking at what everyone's doing. And that's something that we've grown accustomed to in our business, of finding value in that commissioning agent. And typically, he would not be employed by the design professional, no.
And Ms. Heiliger, in the cases of our school, 46 and 47, the commissioning agent, the contract is with the district, so that is our commissioning agent. It's our contract.
Good way of doing it, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. George, you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my question was, first of all, to find out, these 46 and 47 is going to be possibly LEED certified? That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And we don't have any other buildings at the moment?
That's correct. Elementary 46 was going to be our first LEED certified
First LEED
building.
certified.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'd like to know, overall in Texas, for example, which district taking a lead in this area? I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you're explaining. So who is taking a lead, who is really feel like this is something important? And
That's a great question, and it's interesting. It felt like it was gaining incredible momentum in Texas, and then 2008 hit, and people kind of pulled back a little bit because they thought it was going to be expensive, and school funding was cut so deeply that we couldn't get anyone to agree that the commissioning agent was a good investment. So it kind of, in your marketplace, moved to the back for a while. We really have seen it regain importance, I think, as people have realized it's a life cycle issue. And in fact, you can't drive around town very easily anymore without seeing, apartment complexes and high-rises. Everything is sort of moving back to LEED, and we've learned how to do it a little more efficiently, a little less premium cost. And so I would say in every market, you're seeing LEED projects return kind of to prominence and as a desirable goal. Because again, when you listen to all of these are great goals. Some of them may not be for everybody, but they certainly are things we would want in a school building. So I don't know if that's, I would say percentage-wise, Mr. George, is probably still less than 10 or 15% will do it, but every market sector is experimenting with it pretty seriously right now. And we're seeing it. I live near Memorial City Mall, and the Shipley's Donuts is LEED certified, so it's coming at us from all angles.
Jennifer's from California, and if I remember right, that's LEED actually started out in that part of the country, and so it's very big out in California. And quite honestly, many years ago, we were sitting around thinking, this is never going to take hold in Texas, and it really is. We're just all across the state. Some of the examples we use, you can see in San Antonio, Dallas, and of course Houston, and it really is starting to become more of an interest in finding ways of saving money on energy costs.
Yeah, and speaking about California, a lot of the qualities of the LEED requirements are actually becoming written into the codes, the energy codes in California. So you're going to be seeing these probably, I don't know, it's my intuition, becoming into codes. So getting on top of it now is going to be beneficial to everybody.
Sure. And also the presentation, page number 43, you did some price comparison. Savings and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just wondering, how do you come up with those numbers, just comparing?
Well, we do a lot of energy analysis for districts. We do a lot of facilities assessments. We do a lot of additions and renovations. So we have access to a lot of operating cost data for districts. So we just pulled our own internal database of buildings, and you could see the pattern of those that were either LEED certified, or we'll just say LEED designed. They wanted to use LEED principles, but they didn't feel like they could afford actual certification. But we've used those buildings that were designed to LEED principles in developing these percentages, and they're pretty obvious when you look down the list which buildings were LEED designed and which were not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, very good presentation. So on this cost analysis here, so are you saying that for all the additional stuff that comes with the LEED, your extra cost was about $328,000 in this particular example?
which was a summary of three different projects that were summarized, right? We took three.
Well, and these are a subset of the features. There's other things we did that were kind of sunk costs in the building. We didn't split out like the R25 roof from the R21. I mean, those types of things. But those items that you could physically see and touch and say, well, we could do it another way, those were the items that we bid as separate controls. The humidity control units, for example, which go to the indoor air quality, there was a higher level of fresh air ventilation rate that we were pursuing for that building. And so those types of separate tangible items, we pulled those out and bid those as alternates just so we could see and capture the costs. And so we're starting to build a database on what those run. So in this particular elementary, and you could probably prorate that to a bigger building or smaller building and kind of see about where you'd wind up. But yes, that was our recent bid experience.
It sounds like, first of all, I wouldn't start using California as an example, by the way. They are kind of bankrupt, so we don't want to go there.
Architect said that.
I guess my only concern with this is we start getting caught up on how many points we get. And at one point, are we passing, kind of our, real return? Yeah, personally, it doesn't matter to me whether, how many points, we have in a building. The main thing is that we're doing things that save money. And, obviously look nice and work well with, for kids. But that's my real concern that I hope we just keep in mind when we go through this.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably one reason why the district's considering LEED certified as opposed to like LEED Gold, for example, that you do have to get, very involved in getting all those points to achieve a higher number, but certified gives you a lot of the good things that you're trying to accomplish without getting so tied up in the points. We actually, Jennifer, I think you said you already did a first review of the points on Elementary 49, and we were already fairly close.
Yeah, a very preliminary evaluation. I'm just looking at kind of the other projects that you did here, and kind of guessing at where we could gain points, and we are over certified for now.
Good point. You don't want to just do it for the plaque.
For the sake of it.
So let me just build on that a little bit. So let's just clarify, Mr. Cleaver. So the way our plan is written right now, we're kind of aiming for the LEED certified in these new schools that we're doing.
Yes, ma'am, just over the bar, just get over the bar. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that. And we're, the priorities that we might pursue are site-specific or school-specific. We don't have a certain checklist of the point areas that we're going for. Is that correct? Or do we have certain ones that we're always going to try to get, like Mrs. Tossan indicated, the light, natural light and things like that? Do we have is there a formula for that we're operating by in Fort Bend ISD, or is it
No, ma'am,
project specific?
I think it's kind of like what Mark was saying, is we, I think he used the term society of low-hanging fruit. I like that. We do go for those, and based on the conversation now, I think we need to also focus in on things that we know affect the students, such as the material selection. I wanted to say something a while ago. Instead of painting drywall, if you use a natural stone, we never have to paint it. So that benefits the student in that the place looks good to hold forever. You don't ever have to paint it. So
Until they put their hands on it.
and then you have to clean it. We certainly have to clean it.
Okay.
But no, ma'am, there is no formula, but we would
Okay.
go for the, and there's some points that we probably would never get. A couple that came to mind when we were talking, here in Fort Bend County, for instance, under, the sustainable sites, as long as the county as long as we continue to grow and we encroach on farmland, we will never get the credit for not encroaching on farm. There's a credit for taking a brownfield site. That's just, we just don't have that luxury.
No.
The other one, under the energy model, is that we probably won't buy sustainable energy. You know, we can buy a regular energy produced by fossil fuels for 6 cents a kilowatt hour, or we can buy wind power for 12 cents a kilowatt hour. We probably just won't do that. We won't make that decision. And so
okay.
there is no specific formula. We'll continue to go for the ones that we know we can get, and then start focusing on the ones that benefit students the most.
Okay, so I think that's kind of one of the things that I took out of this, is that focusing on the things that benefit students, that we know enhance their learning, that enhance the learning environment. I mean, the academics in the crowd, we need to make sure that that's becomes the priority. So when we're having these design conversations, we're making sure that we're looking at those as, especially, yeah, we're gonna go for the low-hanging fruit, but in the next tier of things, we need to include those things, because.
Which ones are most
these-
impactful?
Well, because they impact our core business, and what we're trying to do is educate students, and we want to give every child the best chance for a quality education. And so if there are things like natural light, being able to see the outdoors in their learning environment, high air quality, those types of things, then in our particular business, that's what we need to focus on.
Yes, but the daylight is a requirement. Yeah, the daylighting is a requirement.
Okay, good.
That also ties to the energy code too, doesn't it?
Okay. So I guess maybe as the conversation continues about this, or the next time we talk about this, Mr. Cleaver, we could define that a little bit better. And maybe when we hear our next presentation about a new school or something, that we could focus on that and make sure that we understand the parts of it that are the priority in Fort Bend.
I think that's an excellent idea. So at a schematic design presentation, we would focus in on the areas that we touch on, the student-centered points.
I think that would be a good idea. I just want to go back a minute to the commissioning. We talked about commissioning as the fundamental commissioning being important so that we kind of have a third-party check, and that's a check for us, so that we know that as construction goes along and that everything's being done as we as the board expect it to be. What's the difference? Maybe remind me first, what is the cost for the basic commissioning? And I imagine it's based on square footage, but you could give us a rough number for that, Mr. Cleaver. And then what would be the difference to the enhanced commissioning? What does that do for us, and what's the incremental cost increase?
Mr. Cleaver, you want me to take a stab at that?
If you could start that, yes.
Again, commissioning is a service that, like test and balance, that you would solicit proposals for. So
And
you
we've
have
already done
control of that.
I know we've done that, right? We've hired somebody.
So you've hired some, so you should have some historical evidence. What we saw, this was about 60, 70 cents a square foot, depending on the time in the cycle of business, and how much is going on in the construction market, and how many commissioning agents are out there
Right.
fighting for your business. You can pay a little bit more, or you can pay a little bit less. The fundamental commissioning, again, that would be kind of, that's something that starts at the construction phase typically. And that person that'll be a smaller service, a smaller professional service for someone to do a fundamental commissioning. He's not necessarily involved in your design. He's looking at how it's built and how it's started up.
Operation.
Then
Okay,
the
so-
enhanced goes all the way to the beginning, and he's part of your design team doing design reviews, and he's there 10 months after. So you engage that enhanced commissioning professional longer, so they typically charge more for their professional time.
So in the cost analysis that you did, it's just a fundamental commissioner that you're using there?
And these three actually had enhanced. That was.
On this page 44?
Mhm.
Okay.
Enhanced.
And what are we doing, Mr. Cleaver?
On page 36 for elementary 47, it shows that we're doing the fundamental and enhanced commissioning. And what Mark was talking about is that 10-month later, and some people also call that an off-season inspection. So in other words, if your building comes online in the summer, that commissioning agent might come out and look in the winter. Or if your building finishes in the winter, they come and look in the summer, so that you have a cool season and a warm season.
Right, I remember we talked about that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
what you mean is they weren't necessarily involved in the very beginning, in the case of our particular school,
No, they've been involved, yes.
they have been involved
Yes,
since the very beginning.
enhanced commissioning, they have been involved from the start.
Okay,
And fundamental, just to clarify, and this is like a code book, and the book that goes with this is about 600 pages, just to help you understand their little score sheet. So there's a lot of ins and outs, but the fundamental commissioning is a requirement to get LEED certified. So all LEED certified buildings have fundamental. You get an extra point for going the distance with the enhanced.
But you also get value.
Yeah,
So again,
absolutely.
we're not chasing a point
No.
on the enhanced.
Yeah, you get a couple points there.
I'll just, personally, this is my 4th school district, and this is my first opportunity to have the chance to build a LEED certified building. And the commissioning is actually one of the most valuable things here. And so that to me is, we're not chasing points, we're actually, that's value right there. That's
And with
value
version
driven.
4, pardon me, Max, with version 4, you can see that they've actually upped the ante. There's 6 points available now in commissioning. So, as Alan was mentioning, the building envelope, all of these have become a source of energy losses to the building, and headaches for owners going forward, things related to the envelope. So there's incentives now to try to, make sure the building's put together right, and make sure it's watertight and weatherproof. And so we're seeing the points available on the commissioning continue to rise.
And as we get more efficient, the systems are becoming more and more complex. A technician is not a guy with a tool belt anymore, it's a guy with a laptop.
computer, yeah.
And so, the commissioning really does pay for itself.
Okay, thank you, so I got it, commissioning's key. Do we have any more questions from the trustees? All right, well, thank you very much, all of you from PBK. We really learned a lot, and we appreciate you very much, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Ron, for bringing everybody out.
Glad to be here.
Take a break. Okay, while we shift our seats, let's take about a 5-minute break and get everybody switched around, and we'll be back in 5.